This is TGM's Legal Nuggets. Kindly subscribe, follow, comment, like, and share our contents.
Hello, so welcome everybody. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning from wherever you're watching me from. This is TGM's Legal Nugget. So today I just felt I should share my opinion on an issue that is currently trending within the Nigerian social media space. And that is the issue that is bordering on the sex for Lamborghini transaction that allegedly occurred between one A-list Nigerian artist in the name of Burnaboy and then one Sophia Eboeji. Actually, according to the story, it is alleged that Burnaboy had actually promised said Miss Sophia a Lamborghini in exchange for sexual intercourse. Allegedly, that is what the story is all about. If you go to the internet, it's actually trending now. But again, you all will agree with me that this is an issue that borders on an agreement which allegedly understand. So in essence, we're saying that we do not have anything to say with respect to the criminal aspect of this and therefore we could end up saying that this is a breach in an agreement. Now, it bothers me when you talk about a breach of agreement. What are some of the ingredients or some of the factors that you need to consider? Now in law, we already understand that for an agreement to be binding and for it to be enforceable in law, there are four critical ingredients that needs to be proved. And that is: number one, was there an offer? Number two, was there an acceptance of this offer? Number three, was there a consecration? Number four, was there an intention to be bound legally by the parties to the said transaction? Now, was there like a meeting of the mind, which in law we call a consensus addendum? Now, let me just give a little insight what an acceptance and offer is all about. Say, for example, you walk into a store and then you see a good phone, an Android phone, or that you're interested in, and then you say, oh, I want to buy, and then the seller comes to say, okay, fine, this phone is just for 100,000 naira. You can pay 100k, I'm going to give you this phone. Now, the seller of that phone has made you an offer for that phone for the sum of 100k. Now it's left for you to accept, to say, oh fine, I'm going to pay for it, it's actually cheap, I'm going to pay for this phone, I'm going to give you 100k for the phone. You understand? Now when you say you're going to pay, and in fact pay the sum of 100k for that phone, you've actually accepted the offer that was presented by the seller. However, if you say, no, I'm not going to pay 100k, I'm going to pay 90k and all that, you've made a counter offer to the offer that was made by the seller, and then you guys can keep arguing and negotiating until you come to a conclusion. However, once you agree immediately and say, oh fine, I'm going to get that phone and I'm going to give you 100k for the phone, it means that you've actually agreed, you've made an offer, you've accepted that offer, and then there's a value placed on the table. The phone is going to move from the seller to the buyer. The sum of 100k is going to move from the buyer to the seller. Now, once these are done, once there's a value that is ascertainable, then you say that there's a consideration with respect to that transaction. Now, the consideration is the value that is attached to the agreement between the parties, and in this instant case, what is the thing that is bringing the parties together is the phone in question. So a value is moving from the seller to the buyer, and from the buyer to the seller. That is the value, that is the consideration in simple terms. Now, as of the time the money in fact passes from the buyer to the seller, and the phone in fact passes from the seller to the buyer, it means that there is a consensus addendum. That is, both parties have actually agreed to be bound legally by their agreement, by the said transaction, and none of them or neither of them is willing to renege in that instant as to renege on the agreement and so on and so forth. So now if we decide to translate this example into the current imbroglio that is actually going on between Burnaboy and the said Miss Sophia, would you say there is an acceptance to an offer, and would you say there was a consideration with respect to the agreements that was reached between the parties, and would you say the parties were inclined to be bound legally by their transaction? Now, I wouldn't want to say much of that. However, I would just want to quickly say that in Nigeria, it is actually prohibited for you to want monetary gains for sex, for offering sex. That is, you cannot commercialize sex. So by the time you decide to say, oh, you want to commercialize sex, you want to give value for having a sexual intercourse with somebody, then obviously we'll start talking about prostitution and so on and so forth. Now, looking at that angle, would you actually say the lady was fair to Burnaboy, or would you think that Burnaboy was right to have made that promise to the said lady? Now, another thing I would like to say is that in Nigeria, you cannot enter into an illegal agreement. Say, for example, as Nigerians, we are not allowed to bear arms. And then I go to an arms dealer and say, oh, I want to get an AK-47. And then after procuring the AK-47, I get home and the AK-47 is not functional. Would I be in a position to sue the seller of the AK-47 when I did not license the arm, and I was not in the proper position to acquire the arm? It would be untold of me. And so therefore I wouldn't be able to enforce that agreement in law. So now when you enter into an illegal agreement, it is not enforceable by the law courts. Now, taking a look at the circumstances of the case between Burnaboy and the said Mrs. Sophia, do you actually think she made an offer to Burnaboy and then Burnaboy accepted, and in return there was a value attached to it, and then you think both parties agreed to be bound legally by their agreement? And if that be the case, do you actually think that that agreement is enforceable in law? In Nigeria, do you actually think that sexual intercourse can actually be commercialized and so on and so forth? Well, anyways, I'm not the law courts. I'm not going to say much more on this, so I'm going to leave it to our social media jurists. The comment section will be open, so please feel free to give your comment, engage, follow us, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you for being there, and have a lovely night, a lovely day ahead. This is TGM. Thank you.